Hello again, everyone. I'm Matthew Orr back again to talk with another member from the IGDN. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Bryant uh, from Las Vegas, Nevada. Did I get that right? That's where you are, right?
Yep,
All right. And Stephanie is best known for Threadbare. Yeah. Tell us about it.
sure. So Threadbare is a Stitch Punk tabletop RPG. So Stitch Punk is kind of this kind of like steampunk, but with stitches. No, it's the sort of aesthetic of making and breaking. If you think about the movie Nine, and if you think about like Sid's toys from Toy Story, those are that's sort of the aesthetic that I was going for with Threadbare. And it's a Powered by the Apocalypse game, like so many. And in it, you play a broken toy in a broken post-apocalyptic world. The main things you do in my game are fix things, break things, and make new friends, sometimes literally.
That's a great three-line tag. That's a great three-line
Thanks.
setup. Uh, I'll have to use that at the booth.
Thanks. That's kind of where I developed it. I mean, not entirely, but
Sure, sure. Um, did you and I meant to look up the dates before I started, but I didn't. So I think Threadbare was for me maybe the second PBTA game that I was aware of. But I how many existed already when you decided to make your hack
oh,
Threadbare?
PBTA games have been around for a bit. I s- I published Threadbare in 2016. That's really when it got
Okay,
to
okay.
people. But I had been working on it for maybe 4 years before that, and it did not start as a PBTA game. I didn't even know about PBTA games when I started developing it. It started actually as a dice pool game. Um, and it was very bad as a dice pool game. It had a death spiral in it. So you would get hurt, and then it was harder to get away from being hurt further. And it was really, really badly designed. I mean, this was one of my very first game design projects at all. So the fact that it was so bad is great. Like I learned and I changed it before I published it. Um, and it's been through many iterations since that time. It actually the idea for it started in a comic book that I wrote. And then I kind of said, "Hey, this is an interesting setting," and I turned it into this game. Um, so yeah, but I don't. I think when I published it, TBTA games were kind of they were in like their initial surge of
Yeah.
popularity. I mean, every other game that was coming out was PBTA.
Okay.
I was very much in a crowded field
You were in
at that
in
time.
the
Yeah.
in the right in the zeitgeist.
I was, yeah, for sure.
So I think most of the people who are going to watch this video are probably familiar with what a Powered by the Apocalypse game is. So we probably don't need to explain what that is. Um, but specifically for Threadbare, I want to. I remember when I first looked through it, and you've got okay, here's it's post-apocalyptic, there's no humans, it's all toys. You could be a sock person or like a hard body toy with little action figure shooting missile type thing. And then you get to the end of the book and it's like, here's how to make your own nightmare dolls.
Oh yeah.
And like, what is the so like there's two questions that follow from that. One is why was that an important part of putting in the game? Like it's in the game book is how to make your own toys.
Hmm.
Um, and it's got several different styles of how to do it. Um, with real pictures, which I presume are like of you making your actual toys, possibly. So tell me about including that in the book.
Okay. So first of all, I mentioned that the setting came out of a script for a comic book. The comic book was Hand Knit Heroes, and Hand Knit Heroes was a project that a comic book that I wrote several years ago, where it was a knitting comic book. So they were teenagers, they were superheroes, they fought crime, and they knitted and crocheted. and every issue had a knitting pattern at the end of it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So this is in my DNA, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then Threadbare has a special rule called the avatar rule. And there's some weird reasons for it. And but it's essentially if you bring and continue to modify a toy that represents your character to your game sessions. And you keep it updated. So like, oh, I lost a leg and I'm going to replace it with, a paper clip. And then the next game session, your toy has a paper clip in place of where its leg was. If you keep, if you do that, you get a bonus in your session. Okay, so I built into this game the idea that you arts and crafts are part of the game, right? And then when we were doing this, when I did the Kickstarter, you have stretch goals. It's helpful to have
Yeah.
additional content that people can get extra stuff as they continue to back the project. And the the doll head dice bag and the kind of hack together how to tutorial. Those were both stretch goals. It's not me in those pictures putting together that doll. That's actually my friend Brian who wrote that tutorial. He at the time was like the head of our local makerspace and knows a lot about different materials and hacking things together. And he's the kind of personality who um like looks at something and thinks, "Oh, I can do something weird with that," and then does it. So, for example, I will give an example of something in his home. The first day that they moved into their home, he threw one of those little sticky wall crawler octopus things
Yeah,
onto the
yeah.
wall, and it stuck forever. It's still there.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
I think they've been in the house like 10 years. And rather than take it down, he put a frame around it. That's Brian. So I knew
right.
he had the right mindset for writing this kind of like, how do you do one of these? And he talks, some of it's very serious conversation about safety when you're hacking things together like
Sure.
this. And also he talks about like different glues, and some glues don't work well with plastics, and why is that, and which ones do, and things like that. So it's a great little tutorial, and I was so grateful that he, gave me this 100 photographs from his
Right,
crafting
right.
session. And
It's
yeah, uh the doll that he did that, who is, I think her name is like Princess Spider Nightmare or something like that. um she's great. One of his dolls that he had hacked together is Mayor Murder Baby, and his wife did not allow him to bring that into the house for the first year. So yeah, yeah, some of these toys, they can look really creepy.
right. It's
But it's fun.
sure. All right. Well, that's that all sounds it's great, and if it's definitely a bonus, unique thing to have at the in the back of a role playing game. So, which brings me to the second thing that I wanted to say about that section at the end. I have received questions about people who are like they want the crafting even more integrated into the game. So, is there a is there it so I don't know if that's like an upcoming project from you that like you're gonna you mentioned crochet earlier, so
So
is there potential for the crochet game where you what is the intersection between the
where is the
making and the
yeah, where
playing of
where
the
could we
game?
go with that?
Yeah,
Um,
where would you want to go with that? Because
so
people the at least two or three people demand it when they see the book. They're
okay,
like,
so this is the first time I've heard about this. So I need that feedback for sure. But I will say that first of all, there are tons of creepy doll crochet tutorials out there, right? So like if you want to make your Threadbare character, you want to make a creepy doll, like this
sure.
is not hard to find. Okay. So I don't actually have plans to do that with Threadbare. Um, but I won't say never. I mean, there's
Sure. Never say
certainly
never.
never say never. And also, like I said, there is the avatar rule in there. And I want to make it really clear. In game design, we have something called the fruitful void, which is where you
Mm,
leave space for GMs and players to come up with, things that are more creative than maybe the designer would have come up with. So I would say to people who are looking for that, like, yes, that exists. It's waiting for you to make it, for sure. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I don't mean to disappoint anybody, but my intention is not to like put out a book of, knitting patterns or crochet patterns for Threadbare, because I think that it would be so difficult to express everything that you could express from Threadbare into that. And every character in Threadbare is unique. So it would be very, very challenging. Although I will say that when I go to conventions and things, I bring I bring several toys that I've hacked together for,
mhm.
like I'll put them out on the table. People will pick one that they're gonna use as their avatar if they want to. And one of them is a stuffed bear that I knitted. I've got socks that I knitted that are part of that. So it can
Sure.
be, it can be very different.
Okay. Well, that's, I put the bug in your ear. Think about it.
Okay, I'll
So,
think about it. I'll keep it in my
um,
in my mind.
the and yeah, we can yeah. So, in that same vein, like you said, it's Threadbare's been out for a few years. It is kind of like your flagship project. And it does is the people are still coming to it and fresh and new. Like they're like, oh, what is this? Like almost every convention
Yeah.
that we go to, people are like, they're discovering it for the first time. So it hasn't reached the end of its life yet. But have you worked on anything else, or is there anything else coming soon from your design mind?
So I have worked on a lot of things since then. In fact, I most of the time what I work on are other people's projects. So I've actually done project management for a project. I did the project management for Jinkies, which is a great little Powered by the Apocalypse game where it's like Scooby-Doo,
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like
mystery
mystery
solving.
solving
It's
team.
fantastic, fantastic, and it's great for kids as well. I've also worked on a game, or I've contributed to the Trilemma Adventures book, which is a fantastic book of basically two-page adventures. It's got a beautiful map, and it's kind of a setting specific, sandboxy kind of adventure, which was published by Michael Prescott. And I contributed an adventure for that called Can't Sleep, Clowns Will Eat Me, which is
Okay.
it's kind of
That's
like
such a
a nightmare um, carnival type of scenario.
mm-hmm.
And
As it sounds like.
yes, yes. And I was reminded of this recently because I did another interview that I mentioned it. Threadbare and Can't Sleep Clowns Will Eat Me have my two favorite typos that I've ever made. And Can't Sleep Clowns Will Eat Me, I accidentally said that there are two pairs of doppelgangers in a part of the adventure. Um,
Mm.
I
Instead of like
meant
a pair
I meant
or
two doppelgangers, but
yeah.
you know what? Two pairs, incredibly devious and absolutely increases the difficulty. It's also in the Hall of Mirrors, so by
Oh,
the time
sure. So now
the
it's
time you're
just
done, you're like, I don't know who's who. I don't even know if I'm me. It's
right.
it's just crazy. And the other one, of course, is in Threadbare, where I misspelled fanaticism as something that a community could be known for. At the beginning of each adventure, you build something together,
Yeah.
and in many cases it's like, what's our community, or what's our device that we're writing in, or something like that. And in this case it was, you have a community, and your community can be known for, it's like literacy or something else, and one of them was supposed to be fanaticism, and I misspelled it fantasism.
Oh.
So the number of groups that have worshipped Fanta the soda as a result is off the charts. And
Yeah.
and that would happen during playtesting. And when we came time to published it, I was like, I'm not fixing that typo.
Yeah,
I am
that's
leaving that where it is. That
it's
deserves to
now
be there. Yeah.
it's part of the game. It was
It's
meant to be
part of the
there.
game, especially because your vehicle in that particular scenario could run on sugar. So it became a perfect fit for, yeah, no, we worship soda and we run on sugar.
That's yeah, that's that does match. That does
It
match. It's
does,
great.
yeah. Some
That's
some
great.
groups will worship a particular color of Fanta
Oh, sure,
as
sure.
well. So yeah, yeah,
Did you, I don't know, you mentioned the quote, "Can't sleep, clowns will eat me." That I know that as a thing Bart
yeah,
Simpson says.
yeah.
And
It's a
then
quote from The Simpsons. Yeah,
now you're talking about uh sodas, and so I'm thinking of the Cola Cult episode of the Rescue Rangers.
right.
Uh so we're just that's I don't know. I watched a lot of TV growing up, I guess.
Yeah,
Um
same, same.
uh all right. So I wanted to ask you also about the convention scene in your area, and kind of it's kind of a two-part question, in that, like, how did you get started in role-playing games, and like, did you are there conventions, and like, did you go, which of those came first for you, right? I guess is kind of what I'm saying.
Okay,
um
so role-playing games definitely came first because role-playing games came almost before I could read. Um,
okay,
my dad was my first GM
awesome.
when I was about 4. So I've been a D&D player since way, way, way young. Um, I grew up outside Chicago, so I only moved to Las Vegas about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years now. And so my local scene for conventions, Las Vegas is weirdly light on those, and I have a lot of opinions with a capital O on why that is. But one of them is simply that people will often think, oh, it's Las Vegas, it's a big convention town. People will go there to go to a convention, but they forget that people are sent there by their companies for
Yeah,
conventions. It's a big convention town for corporate conventions, and companies have a lot more money to send somebody to a convention. They're not going to send you to go to your convention in Las Vegas, in the middle of the work week and,
right.
to go play games. For some people, they will, and thank you very much for companies that have done that because, like if you're in the games industry, and your company does that, that's awesome. But for the most part, you know, like Las Vegas conventions that are for like people, personal, individual, attendance, um, they 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 have a much higher barrier to entry. They struggle a lot more. Um, so I've seen a number of conventions, not just in gaming, but in all kinds of nerd spaces that have come and gone in this town. Um, and some of them have been notoriously like disastrous, and some of them have just sort of quietly folded or gone to a different location even. Um, one of the ones that started locally had local support from day one and has done a really, I think, good job of sort of shifting, I guess, was it was a convention called MeepleCon, and they operated for I think about 3 years, and then they sold to Dice Tower. So now Dice Tower West is what used to be MeepleCon, and it happens
All
in the
right.
spring. Um, I tend not to go because they've shifted it so that it's mostly during the week. And I'm like, I no
Yeah,
longer work. My day job is no longer in game, so I can't justify going to a convention midweek when I'm supposed to be working. Um, like unless I take the
sure.
days off. Um, but I understand it's still a good convention. It's a little bit higher price than I want to pay for a local con as well. Um, but the people who run it are fantastic. They're part of the local gaming community. They they actually understand the local gaming community. We've also had a lot of companies that will come in and they'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna, have our game convention in Las Vegas and be awesome," and they're not from here, and then they don't
Hmm.
understand our local scene and what it's actually like. So I have a lot of respect for the people who actually organize and run Dice Tower West. If I'm going to tell people, like if you're if you're going to Vegas and you're going to try to hit a game convention, that's the one to hit. Meanwhile, I will actually drive to LA for a game convention there called Strategicon. It happens 3 times a year. It's President's Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and Labor Day weekend, and super fun, not too far from the beach. Lovely,
Sure.
great group of people. The Southern California indie game designers are fantastic, and I love them all.
Yeah.
You know, big shout out to all of them, because Threadbare wouldn't be around if not for that convention. That was where I did my very first play tests, was at Strategicon, so kind of a big
Nice.
deal. And then I have
Yeah.
one more that I want to talk about.
Sure.
Another
Sure.
one last convention I want to talk about. There is a tiny convention in Bryce Canyon in
Okay.
January. In January, it is snowy, it is
Yeah.
cold. It's hardly anything is open because Bryce is not really a winter destination national park. There's some things open, and there's a a couple hotels, and people go up there for like cross country skiing, and they go up there for snowmobiling and things like that. Um, and they hold this convention in mid-January up there, and it's tiny. Like I think the last time I went, which was a few years ago because the pandemic kept me home, was maybe
Sure.
300 people, and it sold out. Um, and lovely people running it. They have since, again, they sold the convention to SaltCon, which is the Salt Lake City bigger convention organizer, but they still hold it there in BryceCon, in Bryce Canyon. And it's just a lovely, lovely time. I have never been to a convention. It's mostly board games, right? I've never
Yeah.
been to a convention where there was as much parity in gender parity
Mm.
between men and women. Um, and a big part of why that is because from the very outset, the original organizers, Gail and Gary, have kids, and they made the space safe for kids.
Sure.
They only occupy a certain number of rooms. In one of the rooms, they'll actually set up like a little kid tent, right, for kids to just go hang out. You see people walking around, and there'll be like a little kid like crawling across the floor, and people will be aware. They'll like not
Yeah.
trip over the baby. They'll be
Right.
like, oh, there's a baby in the way, and then just walk around or step over the baby or whatever it is. And you're just like, wow. And it really drives home that when we talk about like, oh, gaming is so heavily dominated by men. Well, that's true at conventions, and part of that is because if you don't make your space really, really accessible for kids, then one parent has to stay with the kids somewhere
Right.
else. And that means that parent is not present in that room. And it's 2022, but we are still living in a world where the majority of childcare is done by women. And,
Hmm.
if you've got two parents, and even if both of them like to play games, uh, the responsibility will often fall to the mom. And
Yeah.
I see it at the big conventions too, quite a bit. If you go to like Gen Con or whatever, and you
Right.
see like
I can't imagine babies being loose on the floor
right,
there.
like
It would be just,
you would not have babies, right? But if you
yeah.
go if you go to those big conventions and you go to like the family friendly programming, which often a lot like the kid room and stuff, they'll often require a parent to be present. You look around, the parent that is present is usually the mom. So like
Mm.
they're conventions, it's a tough call, because on the one hand we're like, look, I don't want to have a screaming child in at the table with me, right? On the
Right.
other hand, if you don't make space for families, you will not get half of the family. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's,
sorry for soapboxing
yeah.
there, but we were talking
No,
about
no.
conventions. That was one of the best experiences that I've had in terms of like, conventions that are within X number of hours of drive for me,
Yeah.
in terms of just seeing like actual, you know, like like full parity. Like seriously, it's like
Yeah,
50% of the people at the table are women, and that's exciting to see to me. Like, I often feel like, nope, I'm definitely in the minority in this group. That's how it is. But it's nice when that's not the case. Yeah.
awesome. All right. Well, we don't want to take too much time here, so I thank you for sharing your perspective. It's pretty neat because I just to capstone a little bit of what you said. I've mostly gone to the big conventions in the Midwest, so hearing somebody who goes to smaller conventions in the West Coast is it's very
Mhm.
different. It's very different.
It is. It is.
Um, and then so I know I want to give you a chance to shout out anything super local to your area, and then we want to get your social media links. So
Sure.
you had something picked out that you wanted
Oh
to
yeah.
say
So
that's from your neck
if
of the
you are
woods.
coming to Las Vegas, and you're not coming during a convention, which completely understandable, I will give a big shout out to Meepleville. So we had MeepleCon. The people
Uh-huh.
who started MeepleCon own Meepleville, and Meepleville is a board game cafe. They serve food, they serve alcohol. They have, couple thousand games. You pay $10 to get in, and then you can play as many games as you want to
Mhm.
until closing. It's great. And then the other one is, a similar model is at Shall We Play Games. It's kind of on the other side of town for me, so it's a little too far for me to go hang out there all the time, but it's very similar kind of thing. You check out a game and you can play it with your friends right there. Both of them great communities, great people who own them. Like I have I go to a lot of game stores all around town, and I would say that those are the two like shining stars to me, for
Sure.
board gaming and stuff. Can I also like give a shout out about my next project?
Oh, please, please.
Um,
That's That'll
okay.
transition right into like, yeah, where
Yeah.
can people find you and
So you can
what you're up to?
so you can find me at mortain.com/blog. And if you go there, please look for, I have a list of my games. You can click, it's a category, it'll list all the games that I've worked on. But also look for a sign up sheet. I am currently soliciting playtesters for my next game. It's codenamed Girl Bright. It is a magical
Right.
girl game using the dice mechanics from Burn Bright, which is a role-playing game that Roll20 commissioned a few years ago. Neat dice mechanic. I don't know if it's going to end up in the final game. Threadbare
Sure.
started it as dice pool and ended up
Yeah, yeah.
PBTA. We never know. But right now
You
I
got to
am
play test to find
soliciting.
out.
Yeah, you play to find out. But I am
Ugh.
play testing right now, and I am soliciting play testers because I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, I've got pen on paper, and I need to see
Hmm.
where this is going. So yeah.
Okay.
So mortain.com/blog. On most social media, I am Mortain, Mortaine. There's a few social media that I didn't get the name first, but usually that's me if you find that. On
All right. Well,
Mastodon,
we'll put
I'm
those
Mortain at dice.camp as well.
at dice.camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will put those in the description of the video so you can find them easily. Anyone who's watching this. Stephanie, thank you so much for talking to me today and telling us
Thank
about your con experience and your games and yeah, magical girl games.
It's gonna be a fun new thing.
That's a underexplored genre that we can have more of in the world.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll see you around on the internets.